So, Ocarina of Time, this is quite a transition from what I was previously doing, but still same information and all that. It's been about 4 years actually. I had to rediscover this account. Got lost in all the other email addresses I had to make for like the Google Plus / YouTube. I still hate that they did that, but anyway, I found it again. I wanted to make something easy that I can upload quickly because this is actually based on a Reddit post that I did. So I'm basically just going to be reading off of it, but I will be expounding upon it a little bit and explaining more things in detail. And a lot of it is based on The Light of Egypt by Thomas Burgoyne. I can put a couple links in the description for you there. So the main part of the theory is that certain astrological concepts regarding the afterlife and other astrological concepts are being portrayed through the game, and the game is actually acting as an allegory as you play it. So this is going to be basically in two parts. We're going to have one part focusing on the sages, and the other part focusing on the temples. Also, as a disclaimer, when I say astrology, this is basically only the planets, because that was the strongest symbol. Also, other spiritual concepts will be in here as well, but the signs aren't going to be covered because I didn't see any allegories there, but I'm sure there are. I just wasn't analyzing those. So, astrology is known as the first religion, the ancient mysteries, etc. It primarily concerns the 7 primary celestial bodies, not all 7 planets, because there are more than 7, of course, but the primary bodies are the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Personified as gods in virtually all religions, these bodies have certain attributes or personalities associated with them, and this is most apparent in Roman mythology. So on a spiritual level, the planets are literally just energies, and each one of them has a particular energy, a personality. So in a nutshell, the Sun represents noble leadership. The Moon represents nature, emotions, and all things mysterious. Mercury is strictly intellectual, neither really good or bad, just represents knowledge, being the messenger of knowledge. Venus is referred to as the lesser benevolent, represents friendship, love, relationships. Also, Venus is known as being the primary representative of the feminine energy in general. Mars is the lesser malevolent, representing passion and aggression. And like Venus, Mars represents the general energy of masculinity. And if you look at the two glyphs for Mars and Venus side by side, you can see that they're exactly identical to the general symbol for male and female, which is actually where we get those symbols from. Jupiter's the greater benevolent. This body represents all things generous and noble. Saturn is the greater malevolent, representing suffering and evil scheming. And if you just play with the words a little bit, Saturn turns to Satan. It's very easy. You just replace the with an A. So you may think what I'm about to say is just the game developers saying, oh, 7, that's a lucky number, that's a sacred number, let's do that. But it just seems to be a little too perfect. There are 7 sages. Sorry if you haven't played the game, there's not 6 sages. Zelda's a sage. Spoilers, sorry. It's an old game. But anyway, each one of these sages, I believe, to represent each of the 7 attributes of the 7 planets. And you notice each one of these sages has a completely, different personality. Like, some of them you might see getting along, but they just seem to be so unique. So here we go. Rahu represents the energies of the Sun. He's the first that you encounter. He leads you on your path. Also note his orange-like robes like the Sun and the Light Temple. Saria is the moon. The moon represents nature. It's very earthy, dwelling in the lost woods. Naburu is Mercury. Now, this was the best fit for her, considering the other sages. And she's knowledgeable, you can justify it that way, but all of the other sages are. But she does help you out a lot. Ruto is Venus. She's very feminine, romantically involved, with Link to some extent, representing the friendship and love aspects of Venus. Darunia is Mars, and that's very easy to see. Just look at the Fire Temple. I mean, generally we associate, fiery personality with Mars, war, the boss is a giant dragon. I mean, it just definitely fits. And Darunia himself is also very fiery, very passionate, and can sometimes be aggressive. And Zelda is Jupiter. She has noble aspirations, as does the energy of Jupiter. She strives for the peace of Hyrule, pretty apparent. And last but not least, we have Impa. Impa is Saturn. There's nothing really evil about her as a person, but if you consider the temple that she guards, the Shadow Temple, there's literally just blood on the floor in the earlier versions of the game. The enemies you encounter are literally the most malevolent looking. There are guillotines. I mean, it's just completely, it's an evil temple. It really fits the theme of Saturn symbolizing suffering, because he clearly suffers in that temple. And on a side note, the 7 planetary bodies also correspond to the 7 colors of the spectrum, Rory G. Biv. And although the sages themselves might not be wearing those exact colors, they come together toward the end of the game at Ganon's castle to create a Rory G. Biv rainbow to the castle. Okay, so astrology aside for a moment, it's a common theosophical spiritual understanding that all life is threefold, consisting of a physical body, the soul, which is more personal, and the spirit, which is less personal, more like the human spirit. Just a group consciousness that we are all part of. The body, no explanation needed, physical. The soul, again, individual personality that animates the body and continues after death. The spirit is the overarching soul, the way I like to look at it. And that's what you try to return to after death, which will eventually lead you to the source. So, in the mystery schools, it's believed that after death, the soul is purified and basically removes its earthly garbs, so to speak, removes all associations with the material world, and gradually purifies itself through 7 planes of the soul world. These planes correspond to the 7 planetary bodies. It's more commonly called purgatory. But basically the idea is that you cannot return to the source with any of these material associations, like, oh, I need to eat, I need to sleep, I need to engage in intercourse, I need to procreate. No, all of that is of this world. It's physical and it's temporary. And if you have any association with that, you become drawn to the earth, and it becomes very difficult for you to move away from the earth to the source. So a lot of the occult just basically teaches you that life is just about preparing for that, and as many times as you can during your life to just let go of things material and just don't become attached to them. I mean, it's okay to have material things, I do, and enjoy material things like food, but just don't become attached to them, basically. So, you die. Your soul moves through 4 astral planes. Couldn't really find a parallel there, but then it moves through 7 levels of the spirit world. The 7 temples in the game represents these 7 planes. Link travels through these 7 temples and clearly suffers. Like, don't tell me that guy does not suffer. All the traps and enemies falling in lava, etc. Just as the human soul travels through the 7 planes and suffers for the purpose of purification. I'm not saying Link is dead and in purgatory, this is an allegory. At the end of the temple, Link ascends through a blue portal and moves on to the next level eventually, or the next plane of the spirit world. So basically, to sum up, what we have are 7 planes of the spirit world that are represented by 7 energies of the 7 planets, and we have 7 temples of Hyrule that are represented by 7 sages who embody the personalities of those planets. So Link might not be returning to the source, that might not be the point of his journey, but he is striving for something higher, something more noble, the peace of Hyrule. Okay, so we're gonna go into some other parts of the theory, just some more miscellaneous stuff here. The idea of life forms being threefold is seen with the 3 goddesses that created Hyrule. Going back to, body, mind, and spirit, or body, soul, and spirit, however you want to look at it. But Din represents the body. With her strong flaming arms, she cultivated the land and created the red earth. The land is physical like the body. There is a connection. This is from a quote in the beginning of the game, during the cutscene. Farore, I believe is how it's pronounced, is the soul. Literally says, quote, "With her rich soul produced all life forms who would uphold the law." Bodies are just vessels again. The true life is the soul and the spirit. So the life forms, as above stated, refer to the souls of the bodies. And then Nayru is spirit. Literally says it right there, quote, "Poured her wisdom onto the earth and gave the spirit of law to the world." And the Triforce is another symbol of that trinity. You can think of the Triforce of power as the body, raw force, physical. Triforce of courage, a source of information and emotion, represents the soul. And then wisdom represents spirit. Divine understanding of all things is true wisdom. And that is what you get in spirit. It is the symbol for the trinity of the life force of all things. The trinity of life force, or the Triforce. Just a little more miscellaneous stuff. In the mystery teachings, it's said that mastering your animal-like desires is the key to an ideal afterlife. Because again, it's hard to move away from the earth and all things material if you cannot master your animal-like desires and overeat and oversex and overdrink, etc., etc. You'll become drawn to the material and it'll be hard for you to return to the source. So again, master the animal-like desires. Don't force it, but that's the key. That'll make it easier on you. So anyway, Link defeats Ganon, who is in animal form, a boar-like creature. The symbol is that Link ultimately has to defeat his own animal nature to succeed and to move on in the game, or in the allegory, to move on in the spirit world. As a side note here, the symbol of the Holy Knight Paladin slaying the dragon is the same exact concept. It's defeating your own inner animal nature, overcoming it. You go into the cave, into the dungeon of yourself, and you search till you find your deep-seated, deep-rooted animal nature, and you destroy it. Another thing, Navi can represent the human spirit guiding Link. Maybe a little annoying at times, but, she's always telling you, when you get lost, you can go here, or you can do this, but it might not help sometimes, but the allegory is still there. It's just always this sort of guidance. Progress is achieved in the game by finding secrets. And this secret usually is moderately hidden. Link analyzes his surroundings and looks beyond the face value. He's looking into the hidden nature of things, or the occult, and is achieving the knowledge to move on in the game, as we too can dig deeper and move on spiritually in our lives. So that's the allegory there. Link also collects items. I view these items as little bits of truth that we, gather that serve as tools that guide us and, help us to move forward, just as the items for him help him to move forward. He can't get into the forest temple without the hookshot, etc. So, I believe the creators of this game to be very aware of the above information. I think they were trying to represent it in a game, and they did a very good job of doing that. I believe that the transmigration of the soul and the threefold nature of beings, as described above, applies to all life. Thus, I believe it to apply to everyone who has played the game. This is why I believe the game seems to speak to us as kids and mesmerize us, and why it sticks with us. Why it's really mysterious and we don't know why. Because it's basically talking to your subconscious on a spiritual level. The symbolism of the 3 and the 7 interact with our subconscious, whether we know the above info or not. We can relate to this emotionally, and we become drawn to it.